So basically, we're pro-marriage.
Yeah.
Sometimes. No, just kidding. Pro-marriage,
Yes.
pro-relationships,
Mm-hmm.
pro-getting your shit together,
Yes.
pro-nuclear family, like
Yes.
providing
Pro
for your
having
children,
kids.
pro-having kids.
Yeah.
Have kids. They're
Have
great.
kids,
They will teach you
please.
so many lessons
Yes.
that you never thought you needed,
Yeah.
you know?
It'll be the best self-development teacher ever.
It's like
Ever for you.
amazing.
Yeah. Welcome to the Womanhood Lectures, where each week we bring you topics and discussions on issues that matter to you, the modern day woman. We hope to inspire, we hope to bring up some healthy debate about issues and matters that are related to your journey on womanhood. I'm one of your hosts, Yasmin.
And I'm Lyra.
Join us at our table, pull up a chair, and sit down with a really nice drink, and let's chat.
Please like and subscribe, and of course, share our content. We would love to hear from you. We know that comments really affect the algorithm. So, whatever you're thinking, whatever we're saying that's triggering a thought, please feel free to share it with us. We are listening. And with that, we're going to talk about our topic today, which is.
Let's dive in. The nuclear family,
Okay.
and more specifically, the attack on the nuclear family.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, what is the nuclear family?
Well, it's traditionally been the family unit consisting of your a man, a woman, and their children,
Yep.
their biological offspring,
Okay.
in the simplest form.
The simplest form.
Yeah,
for
simplest
sure.
terms. And that's what we sort of think about when we talk about the nuclear family. That's traditionally what it's been.
Yes.
And right now, it seems to be on a serious decline.
And why do you think that is? Why do you feel like that's on decline? Like, I know we've had several talks about other issues that are affecting the world, specifically the nuclear family. Why do you think it's on a decline?
Well, there's a lot of different factors that I see. Part of it is changing roles in men and women. We've talked about, masculine traits and feminine traits, and how women are sort of taking on a lot of different roles that are not all traditionally feminine.
Right.
And then vice versa. Men are also starting to pick up roles and sort of energy that's more feminine. And so with that, it dilutes and sort of muddies the waters around what your role is in the family. Because we sort of don't know what our roles are in society sometimes.
Right.
And so now the role in the family becomes, what are you doing? What am I doing? How are we contributing? What are we actually building together? Traditionally, from an economic standpoint, men would go out, they would work, they would financially support the family.
Right.
And women typically would hold
care
down
of the home.
Yeah, take care of the
Right.
home, hold down the fort, raise children, and that in and of itself is a full-time job.
Absolutely.
Being a stay-at-home mom is a full-time job. It's unpaid, but it is. It requires so much time, so much energy, so much effort. It requires creativity. It requires planning. You're like a CEO of a small country, basically.
So what are the benefits? Like, I feel like when we have this discussion, some people might be like, well, times have changed. You know what I mean? We're no longer, there's husband and wife. It's, wife and wife, husband and husband, like families. The picturesque picture of a family has changed, right? So you look at what's happening in our society with the influences, the pressure, the systems, the collapse of really morality. What would you say is like your rationale or reason for why the nuclear family is still so very important? Why do we need it?
Oh, why it's important? There's so much stability, and this is probably more my opinion and certainly my experience.
Actually, there's been some studies on that.
Oh, so
Yeah.
I feel like there is so much stability within the family, within
Right.
having two parents raising children, providing that container
Right.
to allow them to teach them, to allow them to flourish, to allow them to grow in a stable environment.
Well, it actually is like been said that with nuclear families, you tend to have more financial stability. So even with, wives having to go to work, like us, like we have to work, right? Like I would love to stay home and be the domestic engineer, but I can't, right? We don't live in a society where there is enough support, there is enough pay to survive, right?
Off one income.
Off one income.
Yeah.
So right away, more financial stability when you have two people who stick together, obviously, and support kids. There's a strong support system for children. So I can say in my home, like whatever I can't do, my husband does. Whatever my husband can't do, I do. I know that they can each rely on each of us and they know we're there. Okay. Consistency. Consistency is a huge thing that we see a lot in nuclear families that we don't see elsewhere, meaning that there's a consistency of mom and dad, seeing mom and dad on a regular basis. There's a consistency of daily habits or daily routines that you do. When we talked about marriage on our previous podcast, we didn't talk about like divorce specifically and what happens, but
Correct.
when couples separate, I mean, it really does affect kids, right?
Tremendously.
Dramatically affects kids.
I can definitely speak to that.
Yeah. So that being said, I mean, we are seeing the decline of the nuclear family. It's causing a huge disruption in our next generation. Do you believe that?
I think so. Okay. Yeah. Do you think that part of it, now this just kind of came through for me, do you think that part of it has to do with us as a society moving away from religion? Do you think that
From God?
Yeah,
Yes.
moving away from God and moving into more secular ideas, ideas that have sort of no spiritual basis?
Like they used to recite the Lord's Prayer in school.
They did.
Even in public school.
Uh-huh.
So I think that is very, very important, is that we talk about that. We should address that when we're talking about the nuclear family. We are humans. We procreate. We have our next generation and so forth. So the strength of the nuclear family is what continues our next generation.
It continues society.
It continues society.
I think people don't realize that that is the foundation of what society has traditionally been built on. Mm-hmm. If you have families, strong families, you also have strong individuals.
Right.
Those are individuals that tend to be better adjusted emotionally, that tend to be more educated. They tend to be able to understand and respect rights and freedoms.
Right.
Because they come from a stable environment. And that's sort of like my armchair psychology. But I see it. I see it in families. I see that my friends and myself who have been married for many, many years, who have made that commitment to raise our children with our partners, we do have very stable homes. When you come from a home that is perhaps different, particularly in single-parent families, parents who are divorced, I can attest to that. I'm a kid of divorced parents. It's not easy. It's very disruptive.
Difficult.
It's very, very disruptive for children. No matter how nice you want to be about it, how much the parents are amicable, how much they try to make it an easy
co-parenting,
an easy sort of co-parenting.
It's still disruptive.
Yeah. It's very, very difficult because children at the end of the day inherently want their parents to be together. They inherently want to have that stable foundation, and they want to feel it, for them that's their world.
Right.
That's
interesting because I do. My husband and I, we have a teenager, and a majority of our friends are from divorced families, right? Divorced or single moms, and really and truly, we talked about marriage, we talked about divorce, we talked about the rates and how that's happening. So it is prevalent, right? It is happening. We find that, when parents stick together, there is social, emotional, and physical health. There's that aspect of it that you can see the difference between the kids.
Have you noticed difference?
I have noticed a difference.
Yeah,
I have
from
noticed
those
a difference.
Kids that come from
for sure
different. Okay.
And there's stats that show that children whose parents stay together, they're in less trouble with the law. Low conflict relationships. You know what I mean? They don't have a lot of conflict. Well, parents hopefully don't have a lot of conflict. And I say this, if you have a lot of conflict with your partner and it's disrupting your children, it's probably time for you to
Well, that's
make a move.
yeah.
We're talking about
That's a
something
very
completely different
specific
for
thing.
sure, but it is important for us to note that we're not saying for you to stay with your partner if he's abusive or, anything of that sort. What we're saying is that there is a movement towards divorce being the only option. We're not staying in our marriages. You know what I mean? We're not fixing our problems. But the nuclear family and sticking together is actually the most, how do you say it, prosperous thing for your family?
I think it's
most
really
advantageous
valuable.
position for your children
Yeah.
in the future
Yeah.
is for you to stick together, for sure.
So how do we then value that? Because I think it's become less valuable to people in terms of wanting to have that more traditional style family. And it's not to say that other families there isn't love and there isn't great things happening and that those are bad in any way.
Right.
But I do think that there seems to be this dismissal of the nuclear family.
Right.
And this sort of poo-pooing about it. Kind of like,
Well, I mean, feminists believe that it's oppressive to be part of the nuclear
Yeah.
family, right? So it's an
Yeah.
oppressive thing to be the wife, the mom, the one that's looking after, because fathers have a certain role of being the protector, the provider, the disciplinarian, right? And then the mother is the nurturer, the stabilizing force of the family, the matriarch, the one that tends to their babies, right? That in and of itself is looked upon by feminists as being oppressive, although I don't believe that. That's my opinion. I don't believe that. I believe that that is very stable for a child. That's
think-
very normal for a child.
Absolutely. And I think also it's something that we women forget is a very stabilizing force in our lives.
Of course.
When I became a
100%.
mother,
Yeah.
that was something that actually was more stabilizing for me. I had responsibilities and I had things that I had to look towards to take care of my children. And that responsibility made me grow up,
Yes.
made me more mature, actually allowed me to be more of a woman, I think. It allowed me to hone into all my feminine qualities and all my feminine energy. And like there was this way that I could learn to nurture and use all the gifts and strengths that I have as a woman. And I think it's a really beautiful opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
It's really sad that some people kind of look down on that and think that it's old fashioned or think that, it's not really necessary anymore. I think it's a very necessary part of society.
Yeah. To be a woman, to be a mother,
It's
to
part
be
of
a nurturer.
It's a beautiful part of
Yes.
womanhood.
That's my favorite part, honestly.
Yeah?
Yes, because those are memories that just like it's like a blip in time. It just goes away, and suddenly you're just looking at an adult child.
It goes by fast, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And I think about the expression that I made about the low conflict relationship. When your children see you work through a relationship, they then become functional in society and can also work through relationships. They can also see how, my parents worked through it. Like they were literally going to murder each other, but they worked through it and they got somewhere.
They
Not
learned
to
that.
say, not to say I have a lot of single mom friends, not to say that everything's perfect. There definitely is reasons why you would split with your partner, and I believe that women need to find their self-worth. For sure. And if you don't have your self-worth with the person you're with, you do have to make a decision, right?
Right.
But that being said, I mean, the most optimal thing for a child, especially if you bring children into the world, is to show them that you can work through your partnership.
Absolutely. Conflict resolution is almost a foundation for all your relationships moving forward.
Right.
Doesn't matter who you're dealing with.
So the powers that be, since we started to delve into that before,
Yes.
why degrade the nuclear family? What is the end all goal here when you're pushing, why is it in decline? People are having less children, right? birth control, like
Yeah.
contraceptives. Like
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that that's probably affecting cycles, fertility rates, changing roles of women. Like women are expected to do so much more. We have to meet men where they are. We have to become almost like men. You mentioned reverence, like the actual reverence of the nuclear
I
family.
think we have lost that.
We have lost that,
We have
right?
lost that sort of that
Reverence
reverence
of like,
that
this is what it looks like.
yeah,
This is what
it's
it's supposed to
important.
be.
Yeah, that this
This
is
is
important
normal.
and this is good. Like just that it's good.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people would look at things that are traditional, for example, and say, "Well, that's old.
Yeah, that's not
That's
relevant
that's
anymore.
not relevant." I love
Yes,
this. Nothing's relevant anymore
it's
if
not.
it doesn't
Yeah,
apply to you,
right.
or if you don't agree with it. Suddenly, that becomes irrelevant. Well, it isn't. That's not the
It
truth,
isn't. No.
right? And the data doesn't support that.
The data supports that nuclear families are
Or
actually
healthy.
optimal. They're healthy. It's actually the best way to raise society. So as we move away from it, what is the goal here? What is the goal?
The
An
goal,
ambiguous society with confusion.
yes,
With
I
a whole
think
lot of confusion.
so. So if you really want to look at microcosm to macrocosm, our societies are starting to become enslaved, if you want to
Okay.
put it that way.
Okay.
So imagine your society. This is very common in sort of that Marxist socialist type of tradition where your children are really not your own. They're more a ward of the state, and the state wants to raise those kids and those children have a stronger influence on them, because when you have strong nuclear families, then it's much easier to resist that outside influence.
Yeah.
And so if you want a society that's going to be docile, you want a society that's going to agree with you, you want, say, it more of a top-down type of leadership in your countries. So if government says this is the way it's supposed to go, then you, if you are sort of in the decline or you're in the minority, really don't have a say. And so when people move into societies where everyone's kind of equal, these little pockets of tribalism, like families are kind of like little tribes, right? And they protect each other.
Right.
And they support each other. When you have that strength, when you don't have that strength, rather, is when it's very easy to control your population. It's very easy to control people. It's very easy to influence them when they're not tied to anything, when they have no standards to live up to except whatever you present them. And that's really sort of on the macrocosm of what I see is happening all over the world in these societies where, like ours, like in Western society, where nuclear family is on the decline, and people talk about, well, that's all like old religious jargon, and that's the patriarchy speaking.
Right.
No, it's not. I don't believe that.
Well, back home, like the first question they'll ask you if you're a 22-year-old woman is like, when are you going to get married, right? Like
Yeah.
this is still a thing in other cultures where
Well,
it's like, when are you going to get married
Right.
and make that decision for your future to have your family and to build your own legacy, right? And I talk about legacy a lot because it is something that you're going to leave behind, right? So because we don't live forever, unfortunately. So when we talk about the nuclear family, the degradation in the Western world, like, what do you think the outcome is going to be? Like, what do you think, like,
A controlled population.
then what?
Let's go there.
And then
really.
what? Do you think it'll end? Do you think that it'll come to a point where we're, as a society, going to be like, okay, stop with this nonsense. We have to change things, or do we have to maybe start talking about God
I think this
a
is
little
the
more?
time. I
Yeah.
think this is the time to actually bring God, love, however you want to talk about that universal consciousness that is bigger than you. We all need to be committed to something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
If we're left to our own egos, there's no way that we can ever win in terms of becoming better people.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Becoming better humans, becoming better as a collective. So when we sort of degrade these or blur the lines with all of these structures and roles and everyone's the same and anyone can be anything, I think that we sort of dilute the importance and the potence of who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah, that's really what I'm seeing, is that we are diluting it. We're creating our next generation and just being influenced by these same ideas, and then it's just getting relatively worse.
Yeah, because
and
think about it,
worse and worse.
when you have your kids at home and you have a conversation with them and you give them your opinion on something and you teach them your values, and then they go out in the world, they carry that with them.
For sure.
If you don't have that, they go out in the world and they take whatever's given to them.
I feel like the outside world is very strong, though. Like, I feel like the influence of school, the influence of the school system, the influence of like media. You know, we were talking about music and how that music influences our children. Like, there's all these messages of degradation that come in, where we're moving further and further away from what is really wholesome. And wholesome would be to look at your life and say, you know, this is what it's going to end up like. You know, I'm going to have a family, and this is what, you know, my direction that I'm going in, right? Like, we're moving away from that completely.
Yeah. And honestly, having children from your perspective, I'm sure my perspective is having kids and being responsible for other people makes you a better person.
It does.
It makes you a more attractive person. It makes you a better contributor to society as a whole. I think men in general, and specifically also become men when they actually become more responsible for other people in their lives.
Yeah.
That's a big switch that I see. I mean, us too as women, when we have our kids, but men become men when they are responsible for their families, when they actually take that responsibility on.
Right.
You know, it's
a lot of
such a
men who
beautiful
don't.
thing.
You
There
know,
are.
You know, from a woman's perspective too, I'm going to just, you know, like mention something, but because like, you know, I do know a lot of women who were single moms. You know, my mother-in-law was a single mom raising kids, and, you know, and then she got remarried. But I think the point is there's this detachment that men have, that they can just like walk away from their children and not really take ownership to that life that they brought into the world. And that happens quite frequently. And it's unfortunate. Maybe they were raised a certain way. Maybe they had different perspectives that they see it. Maybe they weren't really that close to that person that they had a child with. Whatever the story is, it's that child that always pays for it, because they haven't been around somebody who believes in the nuclear family, somebody who would
100%.
who would ultimately see that that's the best way to raise children. You know?
So yeah, and I mean, speaking about children, when they have two parents in their home, it changes them psychologically, on a psychological level, and emotionally.
Oh yeah, they have a
Right?
sense of security,
Absolutely.
a lot stronger.
But there's something to be learned from each parent.
Oh,
Like
yes.
girls need their dads. I think from my perspective, my girls have learned what relationships look like and how to be treated by a man, by the way their father treats them, by the way he treats me, what they see. My son learns the same thing: how to treat a woman, how to be around women, how to be respectful of women, because that's what we model in our household. It would be a little bit more difficult to do that if there was only one of us. Whichever one of us is there, you're missing that other piece.
Right.
Where you can see what the opposite sex parent or the same sex parent does, and how they react and how they respond and how they interact.
Right.
So, I mean, that's huge. I mean, you're learning how to be social when you see that. That they're your first sort of stop in sort of learning how to be in relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Wholeheartedly agree. And it's because I see that same effect. My kids, I watch them and they have certain qualities of me. I'm like, don't do that. That's me. And I feel like I'm looking in the mirror. But sometimes they mirror their dad, and I see the qualities that he brings into their lives, and it's definitely just very positive. So definitely pushing for a nuclear family. It's not always going to be perfect. We totally get it. But that being said, I mean, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think, like, especially here in the West? I mean, I can tell you that it's probably not the same elsewhere in the world, but here in the West, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think we'll go back to
I don't know.
like
But
a
you know
Christian,
what? It's really interesting that you say that, because I do think that because the pendulum has swung so far in terms
yes,
of this extremism and liberalism and feminism and all the
all the
isms,
isms.
there may actually be a big backlash, not even backlash. I want to see that there's a big swing back towards some traditional values. And I am seeing
I am
it
seeing a bit. Yes, I am seeing people
on
talk about it.
people are talking
And
about
we're
it,
talking
different
about it right
podcasts.
now
Absolutely.
to say, we want the pendulum to swing to
Yeah.
more of a traditional way of
Yeah,
viewing things.
I think there's a real beauty in that middle of the road, and we're not in the middle of the road right
No,
now.
we're extremely
We're off
to
the edge of the cliff.
yeah, we are.
We really are.
100%.
Like we've talked about before, there's very extreme views about how to present yourself in society, what's acceptable. Basically, everything's acceptable, and everything can be anything, and you can name anything that you want. And it's the same thing with the family, where me and my friend, we're family. Like this is enough. And the truth of the matter is, I don't know if people want to admit that there are ways that are actually better for children and better for people
Yes.
in terms of how they live their lives.
So basically, we're pro marriage.
Yeah.
Sometimes. No, just kidding. Pro marriage,
Yes.
pro relationships, pro getting your shit together,
Yes.
pro nuclear family,
Yes.
like providing
Pro
for
having
your children,
kids.
pro having kids.
Yeah.
Have kids. They're
Have
great.
kids,
They will teach you
please.
so many lessons
Yes.
that you never thought you needed.
Yeah.
You know?
It'll be the best self-development teacher ever.
Like
Ever for you.
amazing.
Yeah.
But also, I think like if we can change an opinion, like anybody's opinion, it would be to say,
Come to the dark side.
not even come to the dark side, but come just like see that it's like, what is your end all goal here in life?
Yeah.
If it's not to, get old and leave something behind.
Yeah.
you know?
Legacy.
A legacy
again.
behind. And I say that. But all in all, I mean, it is what it is. There's some things that are just inevitable because there's so many things that are just influencing that one thing. And we've mentioned it. We've mentioned how society's on a decline. We've mentioned the influences that are out there in social media. Like, it's really cool to not be in a marriage or a
Yeah.
relationship. It's
Yeah.
really cool to have multiple partners. It's really
Yes.
cool to have multiple
Supposedly, yeah.
children by multiple baby daddies. Like, this
Yes.
is like promoted as being normal, and
Yeah.
it's not. What's
Yeah.
normal
Yeah.
for that child and for your family is to have a family, to
Yeah.
have
There's a lot of things right now that are being glorified.
glorified. Yes, and I
in the
don't agree
media.
with it. I don't. I
Yeah.
mean, to each his own. I will never judge you. Those are things that you live by, but
Yeah.
it's being glorified as being
Yeah.
normal and mainstream, where what should be mainstream is mom and dad with their children, or, two-parent household with their children, reading books and playing in the park.
Yeah, I know. We're so old.
We are.
Old traditional. Do you remember when
We're
parks
not really that old,
No, we're not.
We're not.
Do you
We
remember
were
though?
born in the we're born in the 80s. But I don't think we're that old. I think we still were kind of raised at a time where the pendulum was swinging still to that liberal side, right? And I honestly believed I was a liberal for the longest time. And I do believe in women's rights. I do believe in a lot of things where, hey, listen, if you want to be, you can be whatever you want to be. I will not judge you.
Yeah.
I don't
You can
care.
have choice.
You can have choice.
is one thing.
Freedom.
I like that.
I'm pro freedom.
Yes.
But what it is like, being experienced now as parents and going out there and experiencing the world. If I always say this, and I say this to a lot of friends that I've met along the way in my journey of life. I say this to my children. I say, if I could be my 19-year-old self, 22-year-old self, 25-year-old self, 27-year-old self, 30-year-old self.
Yeah.
If I could be that age and come and sit and talk to you and give you advice, this is what I would tell you.
I love that.
And what I would tell you is like, you are going to remember everything that you've done as you get to like your 40s and 50s. You're going to remember everything. And what you will never regret is having a family.
I love that. Yeah. I don't regret it.
Yeah, me neither.
And no matter what, with all the spit up, with all the problems, with all the day-to-day stuff,
Yes.
it's been one of the most sort of exhilarating experiences to be a parent
Yes.
and to learn how to navigate staying with a partner through thick and thin
Yeah.
and showing your kids that it can be
And
done.
they're amazing. The kids are amazing. They turned out all right, you know.
So far,
You
so
know,
good.
they're not they're
Until
they don't
tomorrow?
get into a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
Not to say that it doesn't happen. You know, there's obviously nothing's perfect, and
Yeah.
nothing we're saying is perfectly like in stone. Like this is how it is. But the stats show that when you stay together and you raise your family,
Yeah.
the benefits are just
The benefits are there.
exponential.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap for today.
It
and Yeah,
is.
and we look forward to seeing you on our next show.
I'm so sure you guys have comments on this one. So please feel free to share it, like, subscribe, and whatever you feel about our content, whatever you have to say, whatever you feel you want us to talk about next time, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you.